first panel, and I would like to ask on stage Michael Witterson, the Secretary General of the European Data Center Association, Stephanie Taylor, Executive Vice President of QTS, Peter Lantry, Managing Director of Equinix Ireland. Hi, Stephanie. And Lucas Ruland, Managing Director from NIBC Bank. Welcome, everybody. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Michael. Hey, good to see you.
Peter, hi.
Good to meet you. Hi, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah. So, very good. I can finally sit down. You too. It's going to happen. We'll have a 30-minute conversation about Europe's position in the AI era. We have heard, of course, Michiel talking about the differences between Europe and the US, how the US is looking at us, the geopolitical situation that we are. We have heard the numbers from Kevin, and I would like to start with a short question. If Europe wants to use AI, what do we need to do to make that happen? Lucas.
Okay, yeah. So I think, let's say, structurally, we are in a very different position compared to the US. Put it very simply, we miss big tech, right? What's happening now in the US is driven by big tech. In Europe, we see more neo-cloud developments with shorter leases, far more challenging to finance now. And so we're missing the risk capital to make that more happen and expand that. So I think that's where, from my perspective, what we're seeing is sort of, holding things back at the moment.
The risk capital.
Yes.
Stephanie.
I think from my side is about filling the gap between these amazing AI ambitions that everyone is talking about and the actual underlying digital infrastructure that we need to enable those ambitions. Very briefly, if you think about the European Commission wanting to triplicate computing capacity in Europe in the next 5 to 6 years, very ambitious, but we've got a lot of work to do to get there.
A lot of work. Michael.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Morning. I'm going to channel my inner Mark Rutte. Not that I'm a marriage counselor or anything, but we can't declare technical independence just like we can't declare military independence from America. That's just impossible. But what we can do is we can focus on the areas that we could win at. And I think this is what we're seeing is that the interest in AI in Europe is how do we apply AI to what Europe is good at? Manufacturing, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, financial services. There are myriad industries where we can start applying AI and winning in that game. And that's where I think we should be focusing, making sure the digital infrastructure is built for that, more inference, less large language model learning.
Very good. And Peter.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, from my perspective, obviously I'm living in Dublin and Ireland, which is the most constrained market when it comes to power access. I'd follow on from what Michael said. We should look at what the European ambition is for AI. The Europeans want to be able to use AI to be innovative, to be at the front end, to create things that are good. And one of the things that we need to do as a community in Europe is recognize the fact that there are things that we don't want that have to come with that. And a lot of people don't want to be allowing power to be used by these facilities. A lot of people don't want them built in their metros. But if we're going to look at inference and look at AI where it needs to be, rather than large language model solutions, which is more or less, we've missed the boat on that in Europe, then we have to be quite serious about looking after the metros and developing the grid to support the metros. And that mindset still isn't there. And our job, I think, as an industry, is to help communicate the importance of that and the value of that to all the communities that will use it.
Yeah, clear message. Thank you. Talking about infrastructure as the prerequisite. Without data centers, there is no AI, there is no economic future. Michael, if you look at your perspective from a European position, you're in Brussels yesterday, and you're talking to the European Commission. If you look at sort of like, where do you see that we are, and what the tone is in Brussels?
We got half an hour? Let's try to keep this really short. Honestly, when we first started as a team going to Brussels and trying to speak with ministers of European Parliament, members of European Parliament, and commissioners in the various directorate generals, which is the executive branch. I remember we met with DG Connect, which is the executive branch responsible for ICT. There was no data center specialist. The cloud specialist who deigned to meet us said, I don't need you, I want cloud. This is a specialist in our industry, and that's what he said. So I think the world has changed in 10 years, and it's not just because of us, it's because of a lot of things. The world is now seeing the data center, they're worried about where they are and what resources they're taking, but they also realize how important they are for the infrastructure. So that game's won. So now the problem is Europe wants to regulate. And this is the issue, is that regulation can be a good thing, but regulation has a lot of unintended consequences. And so the agenda right now in Europe is regulating us in every which way they possibly can. There are literally 3 pieces of legislation going on that will fundamentally change how we design, operate, and build data centers in Brussels. 2 of them are negative. One of them, however, is exciting. The Cloud and AI Development Act and the AI Continent Action Plan are looking at taking money and investing in 5 or 6 gigafactories, so large models that are European, technocentric, but also the Cloud and AI Development Act is going to look at how every member state is developing its digital presence. And again, this is moving technology out to the edge where inference happens and where businesses consume technology products. And that's a big fundamental change in Europe.
Yeah, and if you look at these acts and policies, are they also talking about getting over the bottlenecks that we see? Because we need to speed up, we need to accelerate.
Yeah.
What is your sort of like a message that you see now happening in Brussels to really create these breakthroughs?
I think there's going to be a clarion call, and I think the Europa NTA Pavilion is so important because each of us as a trade association in a member state needs to be lobbying into our member states' organizations on a lot of the bottlenecks, because all of these bottlenecks, planning permission, energy access, et cetera, these are member state rights. They haven't given these rights to Brussels. So Brussels can't really tell a member state how to manage its grid or its planning permissions. But what we can do at Europe and what we're lobbying for is we're saying, for God's sake, let's try to create a single market so that there are tech companies that can become regional champions here, become unicorns, decacorns, hecacorns, that they can grow here and find this market. And I think that's the key thing we're lobbying for. Stability and grid access is probably going to be the #1 element. Can we please all define one single set of rules for grid access and not 27 different ones? Because it creates cost in the supply chain. Imagine 27 different Schneider or Eaton or A, B, and B parts for a switch equipment because each one is tweaked to a different set of grid rules. That's going to be expensive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephanie, you are actually building. Do you see these hurdles, see these bottlenecks? Because the UK government has a vision and has created possibilities. What is your experience at this moment to really doing the breakthrough?
Yes, we do, is the short answer. But yes, let me bring the example of the UK, and to be very specific, the site in Camus in the northeast of England. A number of reasons why we were attracted to it: the scale of the site, the eventual access to a large amount of energy, an industrialized site, access to renewable, etc., etc. But besides that, and first and foremost, I think the most attractive reason that got us there, we actually found one shared vision for the project. It was the right fit for everyone involved. And that doesn't happen easily. I'm sure many will be familiar with this. It is hard to find a place where you've got top-level leadership support. Think about the government, the AI Growth Zones initiative, as well as the grassroots level support with unanimous planning approval. It doesn't come for free, and it needs a lot of intentionality. And I think what we found paying dividends, and we're bringing that elsewhere, it's early engagement. It sounds easy, but everybody's running 1,000 miles an hour these days. Being intentional about that early engagement and building on that has really made the difference for us. Long way to go, but we're seeing movement in the right direction.
And if you look at sort of like the the things that you have experienced in the UK. What can the European Commission, what can Europe learn? It's always difficult to say when talking about the UK and Europe, because it should be one.
Geographic Europe.
What can they learn from this?
What we're seeing is directly, I'm going to bring you back to that early engagement and the way we've done it in the UK, which is working elsewhere. From the very beginning, we put together a task force initiative with all the relevant stakeholders involved. And what we've built on that is persistency, over-communication, path to escalations, because projects of these scales, of this duration, things will go wrong. If you know early who makes decision, who do you need to go and find, when you're going to need to talk to, you do that at the very beginning, it will move the way moving forward. Yeah. We've done that in the UK. The government has really been committed to make this a great example, and we're adopting that elsewhere, and we are seeing some early signs of success.
Perfect, thank you so much. Peter, if you look from a data center operator hat operating throughout Europe, if you look at AI, AI is also a strange demand. It wants capacity straight away. Is that what you're seeing? If you have the capacity, will they come in and build it straight away? What are you seeing with the animal called AI at this moment?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting couple of years when we're looking at the growth of AI and the demand for it. We know that there's a threefold increase in demand globally by 2030 for data center capacity. But the location of it is, interestingly, still very important. So from an Equinix point of view, we do a lot of co-location. We are at the edge, essentially, in the metros. And there's huge demand in the FLAP market and in the D market. And Equinix would call it FLAP. They forget about D because co-location wasn't that big. I'm trying to change that. But the appetite for AI capacity and power is huge. And it is being driven by the hyperscale players, but also a lot of new, we call them neoclouds, neocloud players that are coming in. It's a whole new ecosystem. And that's becoming very, very quickly as strong, as influential an ecosystem as the hyperscale players. But they do care about the location they're going into. So if you're not in the region, and this is a mindset shift maybe we need to start sharing and teaching our customers, if they're not in the right region or location, they still don't want to buy it. So we have the bottleneck of not getting things built quick enough in the metros where they want it.
And if you define region, is that really the hubs, the tier 1, the tier 2 hubs, or is it a little bit broader? Or
it's mainly the tier 1, tier 2 hubs, yeah, and also the Middle East is really kicking off in a big way now. But yeah, if we try to talk about areas that maybe don't have the same demand, it's popular but not the same demand. You're talking about Lisbon, Milan to a degree, Warsaw. And then Stockholm, Helsinki. These are all places where there's a huge opportunity to really grow it. And yet the speed at which customers are picking up the space and power there isn't the same as you would expect, given the demand that's out there. So we do need to look at that and think about what we can do to change people's mindsets and the customer profiles.
Yeah. Lucas, if you look at AI from a finance perspective, you have these very young companies, neoclouds, that all of a sudden want to invest massive amounts in very large data centers. That creates a challenge for you.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
How do you see how can we be ready as Europe with this sort of like new and young demand? What is your view on this?
Yeah, I think we just have to deal with a little bit with the, let's say, the hockey stick curve. I think particularly on the financing side, it's still a challenge. We're on the learning, the problem is with all these neoclouds is the short tenors of the leases. So the amount that needs to be invested to build these big data centers, and on the other hand, they are getting short leases, so there's a recontracting risk, which makes it challenging for let's say, banks to finance. And this is probably over time, this will change because we, as the hockey stick curve we will progress on that curve. It will become better. It will be more, accepted risk and understood by financiers. But in the meantime, I think we are at the stage right now where we just, we're struggling to learn. And what you see now is that most of the projects are financed by private credit. And I think it's just a matter of time that this will go into the more bankable situation, and then you get like very comparable with cloud actually.
Yeah.
Over a couple of years, the first years cloud was also difficult. Now everybody is doing it, so I suspect that over time it will be doable. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Easier.
And if you look at Select, then what's happening is Europe. What is Europe lacking in that sense? We are sort of like 28 countries. Is that a real problem for scaling up, also on the finance side?
Well, let's say from the banking side across Europe, that's not so much an issue. I mean, all the banks in Europe can work across all the countries across Europe. That's not an issue, and we've seen it in cloud. I mean, banks have been able to support the growth massively, so I don't think that is an issue. We've seen also on the capital markets, ABS being structured. That's, of course, more complicated because of the legal systems, and I think that's maybe something that where Europe is really more cumbersome than maybe in the US, where we have all these different legal systems, and then it's more challenging to structure. But I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's what we learned from practice. So in that respect, a little bit more challenging than in the US.
Okay, very good. We focus on power, energy grids, breaking through the constraints. Peter, if I start with you, if I look at the energy and grid capacity, that's really becoming the real bottleneck for growth of this industry. There's a lot of experience in Ireland. Recently, there have been developments there to see, together with the government, to create a breakthrough. Can you tell us a little bit about what is so special, what is happening in Ireland at this moment?
Yeah, no problem, Stein. So my own background, I come from 17 years of working with the utility EirGrid, which is the transmission system operator in Ireland. And then I was with Hitachi Energy and now with Equinix. So it used to be unique, now it's not so unique, perspective on energy and data center requirements. But one of the things I would think about now when you talk about how things have evolved in Ireland, you've got 20+% of all the electricity in the country being used by data centers. In Dublin, that's 50% of all the electricity being used is by data centers. So it's huge. And all of those data centers behave in the same way. So the utility EirGrid is having a panic attack as to how to handle this. But I think of it kind of like a lot of spinning plates. You've got the regulator, you've got the government, you've got EirGrid, you've got the distribution operator, then you've even got the data center industry, and you're kind of spinning all these plates, and you're trying to keep them up at the same time. And what's happened in the last year and a half is that the government has come on board, and that plate is spinning really well. They're pro data center now, they're supportive, and they're also supportive of renewable solutions. So they've set out a level playing field and a policy framework that will work. Then the energy regulator finally, after 3 years, have also come into a nice steady state where they're allowing data centers to be built under certain conditions, but the large energy user policy for connections and also the government's large energy user action plan have been written and available, and we can work to those. The final piece of the puzzle is actually EirGrid. Now, EirGrid was on board with all of those policies and solutions. The issue right now is that their plate is about to fall off again because of an issue called fault ride-through. And this is a technical issue around how data centers behave when there's a fault on the grid. So right now, I'm working with different energy companies, innovative companies, to come up with fault ride-through solutions. All the UPS companies, for example, are developing that capability right now. But EirGrid is going to cap power use in data centers until they're able to deal with fault ride-through. So that's something everybody should get familiar with and try and solve for that. And that is a fair issue. I mean, you're talking about a major blackout if something goes wrong and all the data centers do the same thing. So we have to help. So this is the challenge, but we're close. And I think there is technology out there now that can do fault ride-through and everything else that have been asked of us. So I'm very close. I believe in March we're going to have rules for data center connections that we can now follow. And if you're under 10 megawatts, you can actually do it as an auto producer. But if you're over 10 megawatts, you have to produce your own generation that's separately connected to the market. So we're becoming generation companies as well as data center companies. So we'll be outsourcing a lot of that kind of capability.
Yeah, very interesting. Michael, you are also talking with the NCOE in Brussels to see if we can also, as an industry, tie the relationship, like Peter was saying, to find a common understanding and a solution. What are the developments that you're seeing there, and are you closely also following what happens in Ireland?
Yeah. So actually, I want to pick up Michiel's "just do it" statement and to talk about how we as an industry can just do it. And this is a really simple story. Your statement about if there's no power, there's no data center. If there's no data center, there's no AI. I think we had Lex made that statement at a keynote last year at another event. And that led to some energy transmission companies saying, well, if you were more flexible, we could give you more power. And that sparked a series of discussions over 2025, which led to NSOE, DG Ener, DG Connect, so the energy and ICT executive branches of the European Commission, pulling together the various TSOs, including EirGrid, to define what does flexibility mean. And that culminated in a really interesting discussion on the 19th of November with two of the highest level commissioners in Europe, Verkunen and Jorgensen, talking about our industry. What can AI do for energy and what can energy do for AI in Europe? And this is sparking two key developments. The first one is exactly this. We need to start learning. Oh, by the way, I just want to make a pitch out to anyone else at Equinix. Someone who has worked in a transmission market and the vendor market and the data center operator market is as rare as hen's teeth. So I hope Equinix is paying you appropriately, because this skill set doesn't exist. When we made our first meetings with the TSOs and the data center operators, we were literally trying to figure out, what the hell is fault ride-through? You know, and we were discussing it and realizing that just a marginal change in business process and design and some tweaking from our vendor manufacturers, we could probably solve a systemic level problem together. And we're just doing it. And so we now have a group that's working with Acer on grid rules, pan-European, because again, it makes no sense to have one rule in one country and 26 other ones. So we're going to take these learnings and try to apply them as a standard. And we're trying to look at ways that we can be more flexible in terms of contracting. And that's difficult because we need to have firm contracts to raise capital, but we need to provide flexibility to the grid operators to be able to deliver that energy when we need it. So these are two paths that we're working on, and I'm actually really excited about this, because this gives me a hope of, yeah, you can just do it. We can do this. No one told us to. We just picked up the phone and started doing it, and it's really exciting. Yeah.
Yes, we can just do it.
Yes, we can.
Very good. Stephanie, if you look at developing in the market where there's a lot of uncertainties about grid connections, in the UK, you did the big project. What you're seeing in other countries in Europe, what's the state, what you're encountering at this moment in Europe?
Similar challenges. I think the timeframe associated with that power delivery is not just unique to the UK for sure, or even Ireland. It's not just so much the TSO schedule, but it's also a regulatory framework that sits behind that is not built for speed, is not built for efficiency. The AI growth zone, in the example of the UK, is addressing that, but again, it needs to be faster. I think overall, you know, when you think about how do you deal with this uncertainty, and this applies to Europe as a whole, we think about it in three ways, I will say. Relationships, alternatives, and policy. And when I say relationship, is go and find your person behind the utility providers. Go and find your person, bring them for coffee, phone them every day if it needs to build that relationship. At the same time, got to look for alternatives, on-site generation, battery storage, whatever that might be. Got work to do to meet the scale, but at least it has the focus that it needs. And then policy. I think there's something really interesting that we're seeing. There was a grid package initiative launched just before Christmas. And for the first time, we're seeing the introduction of a first ready, first served approach. It can be a game changer. How many of us are stuck in queues, even if we're ready to invest, we're ready to commit to a project, yet we are 35 on a queue because of the timings of when the application was made. It's got to be a combination, I would say, of those three approaches.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work extra to get it done. It's difficult. It's more difficult than before, but you have to really focus on all these stakeholders and actors to get them
Just
together.
do it. Never give up.
Do it. Lucas, it's uncertain if you get a grid connection. That means it's uncertain if you get the capital, of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you're also financing more and more, also not only the data center infrastructure, but even the utility infrastructure, the substations that data centers build themselves because they can do it much faster. Is that a real big trend, and how is that for you to also finance a whole different kind of infrastructure?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a trend that we will see more of this because of the long lead times to get a grid connection. You see actually investors and operators building then the infrastructure themselves to the extent it's possible, of course. And this can be part of the financing package. We've done deals where also substations have been financed also by the banks, but also even the power generation on site. All these sorts of things can be, let's say, part of a total project financing. The difficulty is it becomes more complex, more risky, because the timing is then more complex. So it has a consequence in terms of leverage that you can put on the project. And of course, you need to be very careful that everything fits right into, when is the power available and when not, and does that coincide with the RFS dates and so on and so forth. And so it becomes very complex, but it definitely is doable, and we see more of it.
Yeah. And if I are willing to look at the time, if I look at now the view on the next couple of years, what strategic things we have to do if we want to be relevant with AI in Europe. Lucas, to start with you, if you look at the AI goals that we set, that's a lot of risk that we're taking. That's a lot of uncharted territory that we go in. What is your view on the strategic choices that we have to make to finance all these challenges?
Yeah, I think so. There's two challenges. One is on the infrastructure side. One is, I think, on the ecosystem that needs to go along with the infrastructure, because we run the risk of stranded assets. So it's very important that not only on the infrastructure, let's say, risk capital is available to build these new structures, to build these data centers, but at the same time, I think also the landscape of AI companies like Mistral AI and SAP and what have you, that these companies get the room to grow and expand their businesses, because that's the only way to make sure that we're not ending up with stranded assets and it's not being used and then it's a waste of capital. So we've seen discussions here in the Netherlands about the new Nationale Investeringsbank. I don't think a bank is the right way to do it, by the way, because I think that's way too complex, and we have already the tools in the box here in the Netherlands to do that. We have the RVO, we have other tools that can help, let's say, mitigate the risk involved in capital. So, but it is important that it should actually also happen on a more strategic European level, which I think is already the case.
And if I ask you, Stephanie, if you, what helps us in Europe to get to that point? What helps us to mobilize this faster to get the infrastructure done? What is your advice?
I mean, with my development hat on, two key things can be game changers. Number one, let's harmonize planning and permitting across Europe, whether it's grid access or enablement of large-scale projects. And number two, I'm going to repeat this again, the first ready, first served approach versus a first come, first served for grid access can really, really change the way we're delivering projects.
Thank you very much. Michael, if you look at from a strategic hat on Europe, you are in Brussels most of the time. What is doable for Brussels to change for Europe to make it happen?
We're a confederation, not a federation of countries. So unfortunately, Europe is a bit powerless to tell each member state what to do. But the point is the pie is growing, and so Europe can help influence that development. Kevin's slide was really cool. We expect there are 5 gigawatt scale markets in Europe today, the flap D. Okay, we expect by 2030 there'll be 12. All of the Nordics, Spain, Portugal, Italy. Other areas like Greece and Poland will also be growing quite rapidly, as will Belgium. So the point is that the love is being spread, and we need to work together on countering ignorance, whether that's at the city level, the national level, or European level. And we as an industry need to pull together and give that clear message of, we give you value in exchange for the resources that we consume. And it's up for you to accept that. That message is resonating very well with ministers of parliament right now. They see the value, and they're willing to take the resource pain to get that value.
But you need to be constant there and
oh yeah,
repeat the...
There are a bunch of people who are saying, don't build data centers ever again. And I'll say, fine, pull out your abacus. Yeah. Let's go backwards in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So support your local
Yeah.
NTA, support the European NTA.
Absolutely, thank you.
Very good. I would,
but especially the local NTAs. These people are fighting your fight in your territory. It's very important what they do. Yeah, thank you.
Peter, your strategic advice for Europe to make it happen?
For me, it's quite simple. You partner with the utilities for strategic planning and agree with them how to make it happen, so long as the policy framework is there. But then what you also need to do to really make it work is get that license to operate, which is one of the things a politician told me you would lose if you didn't do this. You have to bring the communities with you. Yep. So there's a huge lack of awareness of how important it is to show the communities the benefit locally to where they're, how they're going to grow themselves as individuals, how they're going to grow their economy, how they're going to have a better life as a result of the data centers that are going in, and why we should be allowed to use that much power that we use. So that for me is a big one. Get that community relationship going. Start investing in that more. Don't wait for the market to open up before you invest in that, because it's the 2 or 3 years in advance when you're getting people to believe in what you're doing and win the hearts and minds. So that's a huge task, and I don't think we're doing a great job as an industry in that right now.
Thank you. Well, it was too short, but thank you so much for your insights, and a warm welcome, or a thank you for our panelists.
Thank you.